Wisconsin.
Thank you, Senator Grassley. What Senator Grassley and I have shown over the course of 6 speeches are the actual bank records of financial transactions tying President Biden's son, Hunter, and his brother, James, to businesses that are essentially the arms of the communist Chinese regime. But the Biden business ventures include activities in many more countries than just China. In our September and November 2020 reports, we showed a vast web of Biden family foreign financial entanglements that were largely ignored by the media and falsely labeled Russian disinformation by our Democrat colleagues. As outrageous as the suppression of our reports and the false attacks were, perhaps the most egregious behavior came from 51 former intelligence agency officials who lent their names and reputations to an effort designed to convince the American public that Hunter Biden's laptop had, quote, all the classic earmarks of a Russian information operation, unquote. Without any evidence backing their assertion, they engaged in their own, quote, information operation, unquote, by signing a public letter right before the election. Their letter was actual disinformation, coming from what are supposed to be trusted former members of our U.S. intelligence agencies. They shall be ashamed and held accountable for spreading this disinformation. By signing that disinformation letter, they reinforced false claims that the records on the laptop were not legitimate. By casting doubt on evidence of the Biden's corrupt practices, these former intelligence officials interfered in the 2020 election to a far greater extent than Russia could have ever hoped to achieve. Their willing accomplices in the press amplified this disinformation letter, and by doing so, were equally guilty of egregious election interference. In August 2020, I wrote a public letter detailing the history, purpose, and goals of my oversight investigations. In that letter, I laid out the timeline of Joe and Hunter Biden's involvement in Ukraine. The timeline is very revealing. It starts in February 2014. That was the month of the Revolution of Dignity in Ukraine. 2 months later, on April 16, 2014, then Vice President Biden met with his son's business partner, Devon Archer, who is now a convicted felon at the White House. I just want to pause and just let that sink in a little bit. Devon Archer is now a convicted felon. He got a meeting in the White House with the Vice President of the United States. That's kind of a big deal. The press didn't ask many questions. 5 days after that meeting in the White House, April 21st, Joe Biden visited Ukraine, and the media described him as, quote, the public face of the administration's handling of Ukraine. The next day, on April 22nd, Devon Archer joined the board of Burisma. What a coincidence. On April 28th, 6 days later, British officials seized $23 million from the London bank accounts of Burisma's owner, Mykola Zlochevsky. Let that sink in a little bit. 6 days after Devon Archer joined the board of Burisma, a day after Vice President Biden visited Ukraine, which was 5 days after he met with Devon Archer in the White House, British officials seized $23 million from the corrupt owner of Burisma. On May 13th, 2014, 3 weeks later, Hunter Biden joined the board of Burisma. What a coincidence. Because of the findings in our reports and the excellent investigative journalism on the part of John Solomon, we also now know that Hunter was involved with Elena Baturina, the corrupt and now sanctioned wife of the former mayor of Moscow during the exact same period of time. On February 14th, 2014, Batarina wired $3.5 million to Rosemont Seneca Thornton, an investment firm co-founded by Hunter Biden. Between April 4th and April 5th, 2014, again, the same month that Joe Biden met with Devon Archer in the White House, Devon became a member of the board of Burisma. Hunter Biden and Devon Archer sent emails about meeting with Batarina, potentially relating to a business deal in Chelsea, New York. On April 13, 2014, 9 days before Devon Archer joined the board of Burisma, Hunter Biden and Devon Archer discussed a potential deal involving Batarina. Archer wrote to Batarina, quote, confirmed green light to fund deposit, unquote. Archer continued, quote, just spent 2 hours on the phone with Kiev. I am confident at this point this is a good, if not life-changing deal if the Ukraine doesn't collapse in the meantime. It's quite interesting to see how much significant activity involving the Bidens and corrupt actors in Russia and Ukraine occurred within a 6-week period, only 2 months after the Ukrainian Revolutionary Dignity. It sure looks like they intended to cash in on the turmoil in Ukraine. In my August 2020 letter, I listed a number of questions about then Vice President Biden's interaction with Hunter Biden's business partner and other family members' foreign financial dealings. In making this letter public, my hope was that the press, the very uninquisitive press, would begin to ask then President's candidate Joe Biden these important and legitimate questions. It should come to no surprise that the corporate media was completely uninterested and failed to conduct any investigative journalism. Nearly 2 years after I wrote this public letter, the mainstream media has still not adequately pressed President Biden for answers to these very legitimate questions. For example, number one, why did Joe Biden meet with Devon Archer at the White House on April 16, 2014? What did they discuss? Did they discuss anything related to Ukraine, Hunter Biden, or Burisma? Number two, was Joe Biden aware that Devon Archer joined the board of Burisma 6 days after that meeting, 1 day after he visited Ukraine? Three, does Joe Biden believe Burisma and its owner are corrupt? Number four, when did Joe Biden first become aware that Hunter Biden also joined the board of Burisma? Five, when did Joe Biden first become aware of how much money Hunter Biden was being compensated by Burisma? Senator Grassley in my report showed it is close to $4 million. Number six, what does Joe Biden know about Hunter or James Biden's dealings with China? Number seven, what does Joe Biden know about financial benefits his brother and sister-in-law have obtained because of their relationships to him? Investigative reporter John Solomon has added a few more questions to my list, including what? Number one, what, if anything, did Joe Biden know about his son's dealings with Russian oligarch Alina Batarina? Number two, in 2017, a series of memos referred to a Chinese business deal that involved Hunter Biden and included a 10% equity for the, quote, big guy, unquote. What did Joe Biden know about this specific deal and who was, quote, the big guy, unquote? Number three, emails on Hunter Biden's laptop, now in the possession of the FBI, refer to shared accounts or bills between Joe Biden and Hunter. Did Hunter ever give Joe Biden any money, gift, or financial benefit from Hunter's business dealings? After a long overdue analysis, the New York Times and Washington Post have finally admitted that records from Hunter's laptop are authentic, which means, although they will never admit this, that Senator Grassley and I were right and they were wrong. It is interesting to read how limited and muted their mea culpas are. My guess is that they learned a lot from their coverage of Nixon's Watergate scandal cover-up. They learned that when you've been caught in a cover-up, and that is what has happened here, you try to limit the damage by telling a little bit of the truth. In the intelligence world, this strategy is called, quote, a limited hangout, unquote. The Watergate co-conspirators called it, quote, a modified limited hangout, unquote. Regardless of what you call it, what the New York Times and the Washington Post are doing is not telling the whole truth. I doubt they ever will. But just in case they decide to pursue the truth with a little bit more rigor, they can use the above list of relevant questions as a good starting point for what they should be asking President Biden. For our part, Senator Grassley and I will continue to ask tough questions, review more information and records, and transparently provide that information to the American public. We intend to pursue and uncover the truth. I will now turn the floor back over to Senator Grassley for his closing remarks.